host had his ear trumpet to his ear. His daughter was yelling into it, trying to explain to him what had happened, and periodically, over the hubbub, the old man's voice rose in a querulous cry of, "What? Speak up, girl, damn it!" Just past him, Lady Rochester, almost Lord Penhurst's equal in years, thudded her cane down with authority, exclaiming, "Stop that noise this instant, Wilhelmina!" Kyria took in the scene in a glance. It was not immediately apparent what had caused the commotion, but she shifted her gaze, following the servants and Lord Marcross's example, and there she saw the parrot, perched on the drapery rod above one of the west windows, a vivid orange-red bird, his blue wings tucked at his side, his head cocked as his bright eye took in the situation below him. "Wellington!" Kyria grimaced. She raised her hands, gesturing for calm. "All right, everyone, there's no need to panic. It's nothing, just the twins' parrot." Lord Marcross harumphed. "Damn fool pit, if you ask me." "Well, don't just stand there, girl," Lady Rochester demanded of Kyria, bringing her cane down again for emphasis. "Do something." Lady Rochester, Kyria's great-aunt, was a fierce old woman who had dressed for the past 30 years in black, less because of her grief over her long-dead husband's demise than because she considered black a flattering colour for her pale skin. From a portrait of the lady in her youth, Kyria knew she had once been a beauty, but little was left of that beauty now in her aged face, topped bizarrely by a wig coloured as deeper black as her dress. Not, of course, that anyone would have dared to call it a wig to her face. Lady Rochester was possessed of a razor-sharp tongue, which she never hesitated to use on those around her. She was one of the few people capable of making Kyria feel like a gauche young girl again. Kyria put a pleasant smile on her face and said, "Yes, of course I will." She turned again toward the others, saying, "Now, if everyone will just be quiet." She tilted her head up, saying, "Here, Welly." She patted her shoulder as she had seen Alex and Con do many times with the bird. "Come here, and we'll get you a treat." The parrot twisted his head first one way, then the other, observing her, Kyria thought, with a definite gleam of mischief. He let out a piercing squawk, followed by the words, "Treat, Welly, treat." "That's right, Welly, treat," Kyria said in a sing-song voice, patting her shoulder again. The parrot let out another squawk, then took off from his perch. Swooping down, he dug his claws into Lady Rochester's hair and flew on, the intricate black wig dangling from his claws. Lady Rochester let out a squawk to rival the bird's, clapping her hands to her head. The sight of Lady Rochester's naked head was enough to send Cousin Wilhelmina and her companion into hysterics again, and across the room old Lord Penhurst burst into a loud cackle of laughter. Kyria clamped her lips shut over the giggle that threatened to rise from her throat and ran after the bird, followed by the maid and the footman. Wellington led them along the corridor and down the front stairs. Kyria clattered down after them, the train of followers behind her growing as guests and servants joined the chase. Cousin Albert walked through the front door at that moment and stood gaping at the sight of the crowd rushing down the stairs toward him. "Close the door!" Kyria cried in consternation. "Close the—" "What?" Albert began in confusion, then ducked as the flame-red parrot dived at him. The bird flew out the door, and Kyria let out a groan of frustration. There was no telling where the thing would go now. She rushed past Albert, who had straightened up and was blinking rapidly. Shading her eyes, she looked up and spotted Wellington winging his way up into the branches of the old spreading oak to the west of the house. She ran down the shallow steps that led to the formal front lawn and followed the parrot. Beneath the oak tree, she stopped and looked up. Wellington was sitting high up on one of the bare limbs, shredding the wig with his claws. Kyria let out a groan. "Blast Theo in his presence." The maid reached her, and Kyria turned to her. "We've got to get that bird down. Fetch me some nuts, will you, and cut up an apple. I'll see if I can lure him down. And Cooper," she swung around to address the footman, "find Alex and Con and tell them to get down here right away if they don't want to lose Welly." The servants nodded and hurried off to do her bidding. The rest of the servants and the house guests milled around, looking up at the parrot in the tree. Kyria glanced around at them, wishing futilely that there was someone here to help her. Reed, the most reliable of them all, had ridden out this morning with the estate manager to look into some problem at one of the farms, and Stephen and Olivia, along with her mother, were down at the vicarage discussing the upcoming wedding ceremony. Thisbe and her husband, of course, were deep in some experiment or other at their laboratory. The lab had been built a few years earlier to replace Thisbe's